There's always like the male character that's like, this is the fiercest warrior. And he's like very masculine and tough and big. When women see that character, it's funny because seemingly he's stronger, taller, bigger, but he's repulsive to the feminine because he almost shows up as an ogre in that he has all the masculine traits, but he has zero feminine integration. And that's why he's not the main character. It's why he's not the hero. He's just the big, muscly guy that is the first one to try to take out the hero. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here. And today I want to do a quick little episode all about masculine fulfillment and satisfaction and how that is impossible without feminine integration. Lately, my episodes have been like 25, 30 minutes. I want to keep this one a little shorter, keep it around 15, and just get straight into this teaching that I think is pivotal. And it's something that I work with my clients on, and it's something that I see happening in the world in a big way. Number one, I'm going to just jump straight into this specific teaching. Okay, yin and yang, correct? We all know yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine element. So here we see this yin and yang that I've drawn here. You see the white side, you see the black side. For those that don't know, the white represents masculine consciousness. It represents the masculine energy in the world, order, logic, clarity, honor, integrity, all of those things. The dark side represents the feminine elements in our world, the subconscious elements in our world, the divine elements, right? The things that we can't see, our emotion, our need for rest, our even some of our repressed darkness, all of which is pivotal in becoming ourselves. Both elements have to be present for us to be truly integrated. And so what happens is most of us, we stay here at number one. We are operating right here in masculine consciousness. That is where we are, that's where we sit, and it's where we continue to sit until we have an initiation, until we have the call, if you will, until we get called for something greater, something is missing. And so what I see with a lot of men, and specifically with a lot of my clients that come to me, is there are a couple of things happening. So number one, it's, oh, everything I'm doing, everything I've been doing just doesn't feel good enough anymore. It just feels gray. The friend circle I'm in just doesn't feel connected to me anymore. I'm just bored. I feel like there's got to be something else. There's got to be something greater. Is this all there is? Like, it's just not good. It's just not good. It's gray. I'm dissatisfied. And so what happens is you're being called. This man is being called for a spiritual awakening. He's being called into something greater. What he's being called towards is his zone of genius, which is found here in the white circle inside of the feminine side of the yin yang, right? How does he get there? Okay. How does he get there? He's got to go into the black circle and the masculine side, which represents the feminine and the masculine. And what that is and how that begins is it represents your greatest pain point. Your greatest pain point. The repressed anger, the repressed sadness, all of the things that come up for him, for you as a man, right before you go to numb it out, right before you go to make that drink, right before you go to masturbate, right before you go to eat that extra food. All of those feelings, all of those emotions that come up. And remember, when we think about our emotions, we've got our 5 major emotions that all of our like 250 emotions come back to. So joy is one of them. That's where we want to be. We love joy. That's where we're moving towards. Anger is one of them. Sadness is one of them. Fear is one of them. Anxiety. So those core 4 are messengers. They're actually messengers. They're signals telling us what is happening, where we need to go into. They're signals calling us into number 2. And if we listen, we allow ourselves, which is something I'm helping men do in my coaching practice, we're able to find our way into our repressed parts. We're able to find our way into the feminine. It's really interesting. I'm going to kind of bring a couple of things together here, but someone asked me this week, they were like, what are your three non-negotiables in your ideal man? And it was so interesting to me because I had them right away. It was like, for me personally, was God first. He puts God first. He submits to God. Number two, he wants to be a father. Number three, he's strong. To me, these are all very clearly masculine initiatory elements. What I mean by that is all three of these things require an initiation. Just like for women, motherhood is an initiation, right? And a couple of other things. But for men, why I say God first is not just because, oh yeah, he just needs to be a God-fearing man. It's because of what it means to put God first as a man. It's done that way by natural design. We have this specific hierarchy where when a man submits to God, he really lives from following a higher power. It doesn't have to be a specific God in any specific religion. Then he becomes the bride of God. I know in the Bible it says man is the bride of Christ. This all makes sense because when he is able to do that, he surrenders his need for control, his need for external validation. Oh, the money, oh, the accolades, oh, the business, doing so great. Men that don't surrender that need for control stay stuck in number one. And a lot of people go their whole lives stuck in number one. And a lot of people don't have this spiritual call, and that's okay. But if you're a man and you do, then what you're being called to is something extremely beautiful. You're being called to your zone of genius. And the way that you get there is by going through the feminine, is by integrating the feminine. And so when you're able to go on that journey, you create space in your body to understand the feminine elements, to understand the feminine side of life. And by the way, this is the only way you will ever actually help a woman feel safe with you. It's the only way a woman will ever feel safe with you is if you've been able to do that. And that's why it's done this way by natural design, by God-given order, right? God leads man, man leads woman, woman leads child, and it all comes back around. And so it's a very beautiful thing. And when you go there into your biggest pain point, it's very difficult because you feel like your world is being turned upside down. All of the success you got over there in your masculine consciousness, all of the accolades, all of the status, the earthly status that you might have based on all of the accomplishments you've had. Suddenly, all of that is null and void because you're missing that greater purpose. You're missing something. What you're really missing is who you are. Because the reason you're being called and the reason it's so painful is because you've been operating in a way that has just been a protective mechanism, protecting yourself from the world based on wounding and trauma that clearly happened when you were a child. You developed all these masks and you created all of these masks, and so much got repressed, especially if something really major happened as a child. If you had a parent that really was not there for you or did not give you love, and you decided you weren't good enough, because that's what small children decide. Every small child needs their parent, loves their parent. Their parent is everything. So if they're not getting the love that they need, they believe it's their fault. And then a lot of times, and what I see with men happening often is if they just sit in that belief that, well, this is my fault, everything, my parent doesn't love me, they're not giving me what I need, they will die. They will fall into a puddle and a mess, and there will be zero effectiveness. He can't survive in that way. So what ends up happening is they grow a part of themselves. They develop a protective part of themselves that kind of comes in and just it becomes the guard dog, becomes the watchdog for this little child, which is such a noble thing. And it's something that had to happen to protect them from the pain that the child just could not experience during that time. But what ended up happening was now their entire identity was built around the guard dog. No one in, no one out. We can't feel our emotions. We're completely blocked off from the world, and we're completely blocked off from the feminine essence, the feminine aspects of the world, the beautiful nature, the beauty that exists in the world. Because what if we get hurt if we let something in? And so, what I see with a lot of men is there is a disembodiment going on. There is a disconnect between the body, which includes the heart and the gut and the mind. They are disconnected. I had a beautiful session with a client this morning, and we really were able to get to the guard dog that has been protecting this little inner child and really get him to explain to us how much love he actually needs. Because what had been happening with this specific client is he had been repressing the guard dog because the guard dog was actually extremely angry. There was so much anger there at the injustice that had occurred to the small child that the guard dog became his protector and had so much anger. But because we're not allowed to be angry, and there's been this massive sanitation of men, especially over the last few decades, this notion that men need to be like boys need to be raised like girls, and they can't get angry. And anger is bad because anger is the masculinity of our grandfathers. So men have done a 180 and they've just completely just become doormats. And so he watched his father do this. And so he also had this vision that being angry is bad because of what he watched his father express. And his father is, one of the 180 counter revolutions of the masculinity of our grandfathers, which said, anger is the only emotion that we're allowed to show. And so helping him actually tap into that anger, because what is anger's purpose? Like I said a little bit earlier, it's a messenger. What its purpose is to tell us, I've been disrespected. There's been an injustice done to me. These are all extremely powerful and important messages that must be heard. And a lot of times, men will go one of two ways. They'll either go the doormat route where they'll repress, 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 or they'll go the macho route where they don't know how to self-regulate. And because they're so scared of the feminine, all they do is just blow up in anger. But the actual message, the actual need that is not being met gets left out of the message. And they end up just showing up as a scary, scary man. And what's happening on both sides of this equation is a non-integrated feminine, an inability, a lack of tapping into the pain and allowing the pain to show us what the true message is for us. And as people get into the spiritual awakening, as people go on this path where they get into their pain, they allow themselves to start to understand, oh, wow, there's so much power in my emotions, in my needs. I've been disrespected. There's been an injustice done to me. There's so much space there to safely express that anger and to do it in a masculine way. And because when men are able to do this, they're able to fully create space in their bodies and let go of the control that those guard dog protectors have on them, keeping them from what's actually beautiful and what's wonderful in life. I asked this client, I said, what are you afraid of will happen if you get angry? And his answer was, what if it's too much and I can't handle it and no one else can handle it? And that's just so heartbreaking for me because, again, it's 2024, but we're just so disconnected from our tribal history. We're so disconnected from the rituals that actually facilitated these processes for boys so that they found their most satisfactory and fulfilling lives. Same for girls, different rituals, right? And so what we're doing here and why I believe in coaching so much and why I just think this is so powerful is as adults, we're reclaiming all of these processes and rituals that we didn't get to have as children because we're in this like GDP focused modern world that is obsessed with money and stuff. And we have complete disconnection from the reality and the truth behind what matters, our relationships, our fulfillment, right? Motherhood, fatherhood, legacy, all of that. All of those things. I can go on a million tangents on that stuff. But the point is, when a man submits to that higher power, submits to God leading him, submits to the call, submits to his gut instinct, it's fucking scary for a man who's been controlling every aspect of his life because he thought that's how he had to do it. Things can get blown up, relationships can end, things can get crazy. But what's on the other side of that? What's actually on the other side of that is your zone of genius. That's why it's done this way. It's the natural design of life that you can't access your actual true self, your zone of genius, the greatest gifts that you are meant to give the world unless you go through your pain first, unless you really let yourself sit with the pain, unless you sit with the discomfort, unless you sit with the realizations of, fuck, I'm addicted to food. I'm addicted to screens. I'm disembodied. And this is such an embodiment practice, and it's so important. A lot of men that I see as well, they want to understand all this. They're like, oh, that's so cool. And they intellectualize it here, and they're still missing their heart and their gut. Our heart and our gut communicate with us in ways that are far more intelligent than our mind. That's that ancient intelligence. And so, watching a man find his zone of genius, watching a man integrate the feminine by submitting to the will of God, by submitting to that higher power leading him, by trusting himself in that way, by coming into a real reverence for his body, his entire body, the body that's been shamed for so long. And women have a whole other history of people shaming them for their bodies in so many different ways. But for men, it's you're bad, you're evil, your sexual desires are bad. And all of this is so harmful because these are the things that make men the most potent in the world. And these are the things that make men dangerous, but not a danger, as Traver Boehm from Uncivilized Man talks about. And these are the things that make a man so desirable by women, right? It's the embodiment, the felt sense, the presence. And I can even speak right now. I went to a gathering on Thursday night to hear one of my good friends in my community. He has this organization where he's a health coach, but he does it through biblical teachings of Christ. And so it's a very beautiful organization. It's called Kingdom Health. Shout out Patrick. And he has people working in his organization, and they have done this process where they have had different people come and speak and share their stories. And there was a man sharing his story of this integration, sharing his story of going from number one, finding some sort of success, but going to college and it not quite feeling right, decided to do finance because everyone was telling him he should. And then early on in his 20s, he bravely went into that biggest pain point and he broke down and he identified those masks and all of those things. And he went through his feminine integration, which was a submission to God. And he found his zone of genius. And now he is present and calm and grounded as he continues to move through life from his gifts. As a woman, even being in the presence of that is very calming. I almost feel like the other half of life is turned on, right? Masculine consciousness. The light switch of masculine consciousness is on. And now the feminine has the masculine energy there. And now we're complete. And it's a very felt sense and it's very nuanced. And I always feel happy and just like I can do anything in the presence of such a strong, integrated masculine presence, right? It's like when we think about the movie Troy or even Gladiator, right? There's always a character when like the main guy before he's about to do the fight, there's always like the the other side always comes out with some sort of like ogre like giant like male character that's like, this is the fiercest warrior, and he's like very masculine and tough and big. When women see that character, it's funny because seemingly he's stronger, taller, bigger, but he's repulsive to the feminine because he almost shows up as an ogre in that he has all the masculine traits, but he has zero feminine integration. And that's why he's not the main character. It's why he's not the hero. He's just the big, muscly guy that is the first one to try to take out the hero, right? Thinking back to Troy, it's Hector, right? That is a wonderful masculine figure in that film, right? The brother of Paris. He's the one that's married. He's the one that has a child. He's the one that is holding down the fort of Troy, you know? And so, and the reason he's so attractive to women is because he's integrated his feminine. He's gone through his pain and he understands what it means to submit control to the higher power. And in doing so, he knows what it's like for the feminine to go through life. And what is the feminine's greatest desire? To be seen, to be understood, to be really, really sat with and lived with and seen and felt in all that she is. He can't do that unless he knows what that feels like, unless he knows that God is leading him. And no matter what, God will always be there for him, no matter where he is, no matter how ugly what he's going through is, no matter how ugly the moment he's in is, no matter how bad his sin is, there's always be God there. And for a woman to feel that from her man is everything. And so, all this to say, masculine spiritual awakening is impossible without feminine integration. And that is the moral of this episode. Hope y'all have enjoyed it. Ask questions. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and looking forward to the next one. If you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.